Hello and welcome back to the Deep Dive, everyone, especially those of you out there working hard on your UPSC goals.
Absolutely. And let's jump right into today's most significant current events for those preparing for those exams. It's February 7th, 2025. This is part one, and we'll have two more parts to come.
Okay, so some of these topics we might have already touched on in previous deep dives, so think of this as a little bit of extra revision for you. And if you're new here, be sure to like and subscribe to stay updated. Now, imagine you're on vacation. Beautiful Greek island Santorini, white houses, those amazing sunsets over the Aegean. Suddenly the ground starts shaking.
And this is no ordinary island, you see. It's actually the rim of a huge volcanic caldera.
What?
A caldera, a giant crater left over from an ancient eruption, now flooded with water.
Okay, I see.
So yeah, these earthquake storms, they're not unusual for Santorini. This time it was serious enough to trigger a major evacuation.
Definitely reminds us of the power of nature. And that location, right in the Aegean Sea, close to Greece, Turkey, not too far from Crete, it's a pretty seismically active zone. All right, let's move on from earthquakes to something a little more collaborative.
Exercise Ekuverin. That's a joint military exercise. India and the Maldives. It's underway right now.
Ekuverin.
Means friends in Divi. That's the Maldivian language.
Oh, okay. So it really emphasizes those close ties between the two nations.
Exactly. And this is the 13th edition, so they've been doing this for quite a while.
So a clear focus on things like counterterrorism, disaster relief.
Makes sense considering where the Maldives are, right in the Indian Ocean.
And this year, they're holding the exercise in the Maldives themselves.
Last year, it was Uttarakhand in India.
So, getting to train in different environments, that's really valuable. And it's not just Ekuverin. They also have exercise Ikatha, which is naval-focused, shows the breadth of their cooperation, right? Okay, now for something a bit different, we're talking military tech, something with potential geopolitical implications.
The Iskander-M missile system.
Lay it on me.
Mobile, short-range, ballistic missile. Russia developed it, deployed it back in 2006.
I've heard of this, yeah. It's caused a bit of a stir, hasn't it?
Definitely, especially among Russia's neighbors. The range is 500 kilometers, for one thing.
That's a significant distance.
And it travels at Mach 7.
7 times the speed of sound, wow.
Highly maneuverable, too. Plus, it can carry both conventional and nuclear warheads. Makes it a pretty strategically significant weapon. Think about it. They've deployed it in places like Kaliningrad.
That's that Russian exclave, right? Wedged between Poland and Lithuania, both NATO members.
Exactly. So you can see why people are concerned, especially given its potential reach to major European cities. And it's not just hypothetical. Remember the 2008 conflict with Georgia?
Russia used it then.
They did. It proved its effectiveness in a real-world scenario.
Okay, UPSC aspirants, here's something to ponder. How might this Iskander-M shift the power dynamics in Eastern Europe? What does it mean for Russia's relationship with NATO? Yeah. Lots to unpack there. All right, let's switch gears from geopolitics to health and the environment.
Unfortunately, we have to start with a tragic incident in Kerala. An 8-year-old girl passed away from brucellosis after fighting it for 2 months. Really shines a light on the dangers of these zoonotic diseases.
Zoonotic, you mean diseases that spread from animals to humans?
That's it. And brucellosis, it mainly affects animals, right?
Yeah.
Cattle, sheep, goats.
Right. So how do humans get infected?
Unpasteurized dairy products.
Yeah.
Or direct contact with an infected animal.
And the symptoms?
Well, fever, fatigue, joint pain, sometimes even long-term complications like arthritis.
That's pretty serious.
It can be, yeah. And tricky, too, because sometimes the symptoms are mild. People mistake it for something else. Diagnosis gets delayed. Especially risky for people who work closely with animals. Farmers, vets, slaughterhouse workers.
So vaccination's key for animals. And we got to be careful about consuming dairy, make sure it's pasteurized. It's a reminder to stay informed about these public health challenges, for sure. Okay, well, shifting to a different outbreak, this one's affecting poultry.
Ronniquet disease, also called Newcastle disease, causing a lot of deaths among poultry in Andhra Pradesh right now.
I've heard of it. It's highly contagious, right?
Extremely.
It's a virus, attacks the bird's respiratory, nervous, and digestive systems. Mortality rate is really high.
Devastating for poultry farmers.
Absolutely. And it has the potential to jump to humans.
Really?
Usually mild, though. Conjunctivitis, mostly.
Okay, that's good to know. But still, the impact on the poultry industry, it's got to be huge. This Andhra Pradesh outbreak is a serious reminder about biosecurity, rapid response, all that. I mean, for those of you thinking about policymaking, this raises some big questions, Food security, disease control, how to keep rural communities economically resilient. It's all connected.
It is. And on a completely different note, there's been a fascinating discovery in India, a new species of water flea.
A water flea. Sounds kind of small.
They are small, but this one's special. Found it thriving in a very unexpected place. The moss growing on the walls of Korgad Fort in Maharashtra.
Wow, talk about adapting to your environment. What's the name of this resilient little guy?
Bryospilus Bharaticus. And what's really exciting is this genus, they thought it only existed in temperate regions. Finding it in tropical India, that changes things, suggests a fascinating evolutionary journey, raises questions about how they spread across continents.
That's amazing. A historic fort with a secret world of microscopic life, and each species has its own role to play in the ecosystem. Shows you there's always something new to discover, right?
Absolutely. And speaking of new perspectives, New Zealand just did something really interesting. They granted legal personhood to a mountain,
A mount?
Mount Taranaki, also known as Taranaki Manga by its Maori name.
Okay, but what does it mean for a mountain to have legal rights?
Well, it's a growing global movement, this idea of recognizing the rights of nature. In this case, Mount Taranaki has the same legal rights as a human being. It's the third time New Zealand's done this, actually.
Really?
First, it was Tarawera National Park, then the Wanganui River.
So they're really leading the way on this.
They are, and Mount Taranaki, it's not just a mountain you see. It's a stratovolcano located in Egmont National Park. And for the Maori people, it's sacred. It's an ancestor.
So it's about cultural beliefs as much as it is about environmental protection.
Exactly. It's a big shift in how we see our relationship with nature.
It's not just a resource to exploit, but something to respect, something worthy of legal protection. It's definitely challenging those conventional legal frameworks, forcing us to think about safeguarding our planet in new ways.
Yeah,
Definitely something to think about for anyone aspiring to be a civil servant, right?
for sure. It's a complex issue with implications for land use, resource management, indigenous rights, all of that.
Lots to unpack there.
Welcome back, everyone, for part 2 of our deep dive into current events that you UPSC aspirants out there should know.
Right, let's zoom in on India specifically now. There's been a pretty symbolic change, a historical landmark getting renamed.
Fort William in Kolkata, now it's Vijay Durg.
Victory Fort. That's a powerful statement, isn't it?
It really is. It's sparking a conversation about India's colonial past, how the nation's reclaiming its own narrative.
Yeah, I mean, Fort William, it's on the banks of the Hooghly River. Right now, it's the HQ for the Indian Army's Eastern Command. But it's had centuries of history tied up with British influence in India.
Oh, absolutely. Built by the East India Company, late 17th century, captured by Siraj-ud-Dowlah in 1756, led to that whole Black Hole of Calcutta incident. What we see today, it's actually a reconstruction. The original was demolished.
So renaming it to Vijay Durg, it's more than just a name change. It's like reclaiming a symbol of power.
Exactly. Asserting that post-colonial identity. It's a fascinating example of how a nation reinterprets its history, how it chooses to remember.
Definitely makes you think. How do we preserve these historical structures while acknowledging the complicated stories they represent?
Right, it's a balancing act. Okay, let's shift gears a bit. Let's talk about a government initiative, something aimed at boosting tourism while preserving India's cultural heritage.
The PRASHAD scheme. I've heard of this.
It stands for Pilgrimage Rejuvenation and Spirituality Augmentation Drive, launched back in 2014 by the Ministry of Tourism.
And the goal is?
To enhance infrastructure, improve connectivity at all those important pilgrimage sites across India, better roads, sanitation, easier travel, the whole experience for pilgrims.
Makes sense. Attract more tourists, too.
Exactly. It's about benefiting the pilgrims and the local communities.
So it's multifaceted. But there's been some talk about oversight.
A parliamentary committee recently called for stricter SOPs, and they want to make sure projects are finished on time.
Sounds like there might be some concerns about implementation.
Yeah, potentially. The committee also emphasized involving local communities more, making sure tourism is sustainable.
So it's not just build, build, build. It's about doing it right, efficiently, sustainably, with everyone's interests in mind.
Absolutely. That kind of scrutiny, it's crucial for any government scheme to work. And understanding those nuances, well, that's important if you're aspiring to be in the administrative services.
Definitely. Okay, let's go from domestic to international for a minute. There's a potential collaboration in the defense sector that's been making headlines.
India and the U.S. talking about co-production of Stryker infantry combat vehicles. ICVs for short.
Strykers, huh? Break that down for me.
8-wheel drive combat vehicles. They've become really important for the U.S. Army.
So, like tanks.
Not quite. More versatile, developed jointly by American and Canadian companies.
Okay, so what makes them so special?
Well, they come in different configurations. Troop carriers, mobile gun systems, medical evacuation, you name it. And they can be deployed quickly by air.
Using what, C-17?
C-17, C-130s, India already has those in their Air Force. Speed and flexibility, that's what they're designed for. Good for different terrains, even urban warfare.
And firepower.
Oh yeah, 30mm cannon, 105mm mobile gun, tough armor.
Sounds impressive.
They are. If this deal goes through, it could really boost India's defense capabilities, especially rapid response, force projection, that kind of thing. Strengthens the India-U.S. partnership, too, in terms of defense tech.
But it's not a simple transaction, right?
No. You have to think about the regional security implications, how it affects the balance of power.
And for those of you aiming for the UPSC, analyzing these deals, that's key. Technology transfer, impact on India's own defense production, the geopolitics of it all.
It's not just about the hardware. It's the bigger picture, the strategic context, what it means for India's role globally.
Lots to consider. All right, UPSC aspirants, we're back for the final stretch of today's deep dive, February 7th, 2025, Part 3. Stay with us, and let's explore some more topics that might pop up in those exams.
And as always, it's not just about memorizing facts, but really understanding what's going on, how these events connect, what they mean for India, for the world.
Right, the big picture. So remember those water fleas we talked about earlier?
Yeah, the Bryospilus Bharaticus, first of its kind in tropical Asia.
Found living in the moss on the walls of a fort. Amazing.
Incredible biodiversity we often miss, right under our noses.
Makes you wonder what else is out there, hidden away. And those adaptations, incredible.
Modified antenna to navigate the moss, smaller eyes because of the low light, evolution at work.
Life finds a way. And it's a good lesson for future civil servants, right? Solutions can come from unexpected places.
Absolutely. Sometimes you just need to look a little closer, change your perspective a bit. Speaking of which, New Zealand's been making some interesting decisions.
Granting legal personhood to a mountain, Mount Taranaki.
Taranaki manga, yeah.
I mean, it sounds radical, but it's part of a bigger trend, isn't it? Recognizing that nature has intrinsic value.
Right. A right to exist, to thrive. And New Zealand, they're not new to this. They've done it with Tarawera National Park, the Wanganui River, too.
So this is Mount Taranaki decision. It's building on that foundation.
It is. It's a fundamental shift. We're not just managing resources anymore. We're talking about respecting nature, giving it legal protection.
Raises some tricky questions, though. Who speaks for the mountain in court? How do you make decisions that affect it?
Yeah, those are things aspiring policymakers are going to have to grapple with. Environmental law, indigenous rights, it's all evolving.
Okay, back to India. We talked about a renaming earlier, Fort William in Kolkata.
Vijay Durg now, Victory Fort.
Lots of symbolism there, right? India taking back its narrative.
Exactly. Fort William, all that history with the East India Company, the Black Hole of Calcutta, it represents a difficult past.
So renaming it, it's a break from those colonial associations.
A celebration of independence, of resilience.
It forces us to think about how we remember history, how we commemorate it. Okay, and lastly, let's revisit the Prehanja scheme.
Pilgrimage rejuvenation and spirituality augmentation drive.
Right, the goal is to improve infrastructure at pilgrimage sites, make them more accessible, boost tourism.
But there's been a call for more accountability.
The parliamentary committee, yeah. Concerned about project delays, things like that.
They want clearer SOPs, more transparency, and they're emphasizing community involvement, sustainable tourism. It's about doing things the right way.
Right, balancing development with cultural heritage, making sure local communities benefit. It's a good reminder, even with good intentions, you need oversight, you need to adapt as you go.
And for you future policymakers, remember, it's not just about big ideas, it's about execution. Accountability, transparency, understanding the people you serve. That's crucial.
Great points. And that wraps up our February 7th, 2025 Current Affairs Deep Dive. Science, law, history, government initiatives. We covered a lot of ground today. Hope you found it valuable.
Absolutely. And remember, the UPSC exam, it's a marathon. Stay informed, stay curious, keep those ambitions burning bright. And don't forget to subscribe to the Deep Dive for more insights and analysis. We'll be back tomorrow with a brand new set of current events. Until then, keep learning and keep striving for excellence.